Chapter 22:16. How old is Prince Nianma? He briefly told Gu Shijiu about her quest in search of the man. However, there was too much information being bombarded at her altogether, hence, Gu Shijiu was unable to absorb all of the facts. What did he mean when he talked about the world where she came from? Was she not born and raised in heaven? Confused and indecisive, Yun Yanli continued to tell her more about her background, where she used to be a relatively new and emerging lord from the Saha world. He also told her about the relationship between the two different bounds. The tone in his voice was very calming, which was undoubtedly helpful to Gu Zijia's current situation. He explained everything in an orderly manner. It was not wordy, and yet, could be easily understood. Gu Shijiu was utterly shocked by many facts that she was never aware of. Meanwhile, her arms and legs started to grow weak. She would not trust anyone so quickly, but she could tell that the man was not lying. He had nothing to gain from doing so. After a few moments of silence, she added, "About Di Fui or Prince Nianma, do you know where he is from? Did he ascend from the lower bound as well?" Yun Yanli dismissed her speculation with a firm shake of the head. "Of course not. He is the son of the Divine Lord and the great devil from heaven. He is a local to heaven. When he was 1 year old, you even showed up and presented him with a birthday gift, personally." Gu Shijiu just could not keep it together anymore. "What? His first birthday?" "Certainly. He is the son of a celestial being and demon, so his first birthday had to be as grand as possible. Almost every noble person in heaven was present. Considering your noble status and your acquaintance with his parents, you were also invited to the celebration. There, you gave him a birthday present." Gu Shijiu could not process all the information at once in her already messed up mind. In fact, she could barely catch up. What did I give to him? I heard that it was a glass dragon bracelet." She was completely speechless. She finally found out the origin of Di Fui's bracelet. He even lied to her by saying that it was a token of their love. He had tricked her into thinking that they were childhood friends and lovers since young. Apparently, he was full of deceit. She was so much older than him and could even be considered as his elder. Do you know how old I actually am? A few thousand years. Gu Shijiu was doubtful about her real age, too. 200, more or less, Yun Yanli responded. The figure was the same as what Di Fui told her. But how did she achieve the level of a great deity at such a young age? Her talent must have been truly magnificent. How about Prince Nianma? How old is he now? This year, he should be 7 years old. Gu Shijiu clenched her fists so tightly that she almost cut herself with her nails. What? Have you left out a 0? Did you mean 70? Haven't you said that his cultivation level in heaven is equivalent to a golden immortal? Gu Shijiu could not believe what she heard. How could a child of 7 years achieve the level of a golden immortal? Most importantly, how could a child of 7 years old bear the look of a fully grown man? In fact, he looked even older than her. Shijiu, it is correct. He is the son of the celestial being and demon, so his physique is obviously different from that of an ordinary being. Also, he bears a talent that no one can ever compete with, so it is not something odd for him to achieve greatness at his tender age. Gu Shijiu still could not believe it. But he is already a grown-up, she argued. Moreover, they had already slept together. Yun Yanli sighed. Shijiu, as I said, he is different from any ordinary celestial. He was already a grown-up at the age of 3. Hasn't he told you anything about that? Gu Zijia's face turned as pale as a sheet. Di Fui barely told her anything about their past. He only made her feel that they were lovers since young. She would never have thought that he was actually so young. Chapter 22:17. To recall her memory, how should Gu Shijiu even classify their relationship? Was it between a granny and her grandson? Her hands turned icy cold at the thought of it. She could not believe that she would get herself engaged with a child who was only 7 years old. She pinched her palm to remind herself to calm down. Unfortunately, there was no way she could stay calm. In fact, she found it a little difficult for her to even breathe. Her heart sank, as if to the depths of an abyss. She quickly closed her eyes and took a deep breath to try to think. You seem to know Prince Nianma quite well. Does he have another identity? Has anyone ever called him Celestial Master Zhua or any other name? Yun Yanli was unsure about the answer. I have never heard of it. I only know that he used to address himself as Di Fui whenever he was out in the world. However, the rank of Celestial Master Zhua is non-existent in the upper bound, perhaps, it only exists in the mortal world. A tiny rock was shattered in Gu Zijia's tight grip, a sharp corner of the rock had cut her hand in the process, and blood was oozing out from the wound. The bloody scene surprised Yun Yanli. What is wrong? Gu Shizhou dismissed his concern and threw away the pieces. I am fine. Utterly confused, Gu Shizhou chose to take Yun Yanli's words with caution. In fact, she did not quite believe what he said at that point. After all, the two had just met. The man seemed genuinely concerned about her, but she still could not tell if he was someone to be trusted. What if he made it all up just to trick her? Yun Yanli tried to hold her hand to comfort her, but she intuitively avoided his hand. Hesitantly, Yun Yanli looked at her in bewilderment. Shizhou, don't you trust me? Gu Shizhou hesitated but chose not to lie. You are right. Yun Yanli was not expecting her honestly. Surprised, he gave her a tight smile. That is all right. I know that you have lost all memory of your past, so it is normal that you do not remember what happened between us. When we finally meet Prince Nianma, all three of us can confront each other face to face. Then, you will know that all that I have told you is true. Gu Shizhou pursed her lips into a tight line in disbelief. The more she treated her wound, the more uneasy she became. Yun Yanli was unfazed by the matter, for he knew that he was telling her the truth. Instead of keeping the conversation going, it was best that he waited until they met up with Di Fui. Yun Yanli rose. Let's go. Gu Shizhou did not quite understand. Go? Haven't you said that you are looking for him? I will go with you. Do you have any of his possessions with you? Yes. Gu Shizhou showed him a headband that Di Fui used to wear. Di Fui left the band on her bed yesterday. After that, they went to sleep in separate bedrooms, so she decided to keep it for him temporarily. She was not expecting the item to be useful at that moment. There was a faint scent of his on the headband, something that smelled somewhat herbal and flowery at the same time. Yun Yanli immediately pricked his finger with a needle and drew an incantation by using his blood. Slowly, the drawings overlapped to form the shape of a butterfly. With a flick, he turned the drawing into a real butterfly. It flipped its wings and rose into the air. Then, it made its way to the band. After a brief moment, the butterfly went freely and circled the air. Then, it started flying in a specific direction. In fact, it was flying towards the city. Gu Shizhou was surprised. Could he be in the city already? Had he made it back so soon? It had only been a day since he left. Why didn't he answer his directed audio spell? She followed the bloody red butterfly and tried to contact him via the directed audio spell again. He did not answer, as usual. Chapter 22:18, to recall her memory, 2. Despite the butterfly traveling in the direction of the city, perhaps Di Fui was not actually there. Perhaps it was just the general direction to find him. Gu Shizhou was not sure if Di Fui was really in the city, so she could not use her teleportation to get ahead of the butterfly. Instead, she had to follow the path and pace of the slow-moving bloody butterfly. It was already late into the night at this point, danger roamed in every corner of the forest. Many animals were running in the dark wilderness and could attack them at any time. Gu Shizhou felt that the wild animals were especially active and violent tonight. Their eyes were typically even bloodshot. As expected, one by one, the ferocious beasts attacked them. Luckily, Gu Shijiu and Yun Yanli both possessed extraordinary kung fu, so they could keep themselves unharmed. However, their journey was unavoidably delayed. Due to the numerous battles, Gu Shijiu got to witness the extent of Yun Yanli's kung fu. He was great with his sword but was typically hesitant with his moves. He seemed quite reluctant to kill any of the beasts. He would only do so when his life was really at risk. A cunning black python knew that it was no match to Yun Yanli, so it pretended to have fainted. When Yun Yanli went away and fought a black chimpanzee, it suddenly lunged toward him from the back. If Gu Shijiu had not noticed its mischief, Yun Yanli would have been bitten for sure. Yun Yanli was only aware of his near-death experience when Gu Shijiu assured him that the python was dead. He gave her a thankful nod and sighed. All lives should be equally respected. These animals are only behaving so violently due to the evil influence of the moon. I really do not have the heart to kill them. Gu Shijiu did not know what to answer him. Nonetheless, she was actually quite impressed. Yun Yanli was not only a gentleman with good manners, he was also a very kind man. He was indeed a celestial from the upper bound. Naturally, Gu Shijiu wondered if she would behave in a similar fashion to the man. She took a look at the bodies of all the animals that she had killed and was immediately embarrassed. From the moment she opened her eyes since entering this foreign world, all she did was to keep herself alive. In order to survive, she had to fight many ferocious beasts each day. She had to train her heart to be as hard as a rock. Hence, she never hesitated to kill any beast or animal. Compared to Yun Yanli, perhaps Gu Shijiu was just like a butcher. Di Fui had not spent much time in this world, and yet his strikes were even more brutal than hers when necessary. Sometimes, she was shocked by his savage violence, too. How could the man really be only 7 years of age? Gu Shijiu still found it hard to believe. He behaved just like a very experienced old man who had spent most of his life traveling the world. Distracted by her own thoughts, Gu Shijiu almost got into trouble. Shijiu! Look out! Yun Yanli pulled her back abruptly into his arms. Swiftly, he turned his back to shield her. A pair of sharp black claws were coming straight at Gu Shijiu. Instead of hurting Gu Shijiu, Yun Yanli decided to suffer the impact for her. If the claws went even deeper, Yun Yanli's spine would be torn apart. He would probably have lost a few organs as well. Luckily, Gu Shijiu was able to react immediately and teleported. Together, they avoided the dangerous claws of the black bear. They were 3 miles away. Even so, Yun Yanli's back was already scratched, leaving a rather deep wound. Blood kept oozing out from the cut. Don't you want to live anymore? Gu Shijiu could not help but reprimand him. Shijiu, I cannot let it hurt you. Yun Yanli sounded very firm. Chapter 22:19, To recall her memory, 3. Unfortunately, Yun Yanli was poisoned. His complexion started to grow pale as a white sheet. Concurrently, his lips were turning black. His protective gesture was heartwarming, so Gu Shijiu quickly put an antidote into his mouth. Eat this quickly. Yun Yanli swallowed the pill without any second thought. He did not even look at the pill. His act showed that he trusted her completely. His feelings toward her were now crystal clear, which made Gu Shijiu feel guilty for not sharing the same sentiment. The antidote was a gift from Di Fui. It was able to counteract many kinds of poison. Also, it came into effect in a very short time. The two of them were now hiding in a valley. The place was quiet and well hidden, so not many ferocious animals were around. Although the poison was cleared out of Yun Yanli's bloodstream, the wound was still bleeding. Hence, Gu Shijiu had to take care of the wound with a proper dressing. The wound was on his back, so Yun Yanli could not wrap it himself. Gu Shijiu looked at him fixedly, telling him to take off his robes, so that she could take care of the wound. Yun Yanli hesitated. If I have to take off my robes, I am afraid that it will offend you. Gu Shijiu was starting to lose her patience. I only want to treat the wound and nothing more. Take it off. The wound was located somewhere below his shoulder, so he had to take off his inner shirt as well. Loosely, the robes hung around his waist, revealing his bare back. Yun Yanli was a good-looking man, his body shape was almost perfect. In fact, his toned back made him look fit, and his soft and supple skin complemented it. Since he was a very traditional man, the way he dressed was very appropriate. In the past, many were attracted to his physical stature. Suddenly, his robes slowly slipped from his shoulder, revealing every inch of his skin. Although he could not see her face, he could somehow feel her intense gaze at his back. Quickly. We do not have much time. Why are you so slow in taking off your clothes? Gu Shizhou sounded very impatient. Yun Yanli was speechless. From the tone of her voice, perhaps she was not impressed with what she had seen. Hence, Yun Yanli moved faster. Although she had disabled the surrounding acupuncture points, the bleeding still continued, signifying the extent of the injury. Concerned, Gu Shizhou had another idea. As the wound was too deep, she had to stitch it up. The more she thought about it, the more she could visualize the sequence of the stitching procedure. She cast a few spells with her hand to reveal a needle and medical thread. Shocked, she stared at the items on her hand. The people of Shura world would not usually stitch any wounds. The best they could do was to wrap it up with proper dressing. At this point, there was no room for contemplation. She quickly cleared her mind and proceeded with what she needed to do. Will you be able to endure the pain? If not, I will not stitch the wound for you. I will be all right. Without anesthesia, it would be painful when the needle poked through his skin. Sweat broke out across his forehead, but Yun Yanli endured the pain in silence. Furthermore, when Gu Shizhou touched his back, he was surprisingly overwhelmed by a sense of comfort and ease that made him forget about the pain for a moment. However, the more attention he paid to her, the more obvious it became that his beautiful back did not attract her. Every stitch was done swiftly without any hesitation. Surely, she was not concerned if he was in pain. In the end, there was a look of disappointment in his eyes as drops of sweat continued to roll down his head slowly, drop by drop. Chapter 22:20, To recall her memory. 4. Gu Shizhou finally realized that he was in pain. Is it really painful? It is bearable. Yun Yanli tried to reassure her, but his face showed otherwise. Was it that painful? Gu Shizhou took a closer look at the wound. It would require at least 17 stitches. She had only done 5. Hesitantly, Yun Yanli suggested, Shizhou, can you sing me a song? You have a good voice that will ease my pain. Gu Shizhou could not recall any songs that she used to like, but she could remember some fragments of the tune. Sometimes, she would hum the melody, even though she had forgotten the lyrics. Nonetheless, Gu Shizhou agreed to sing for him, as she could see how much pain he was in. She proceeded to hum the melody. Surprisingly, Yun Yanli started singing and filling in the lyrics for her. Looking back 500 times just to see you again. The time wasted had caused the love to fade. I would turn into a bridge just for you to cross over. Will you listen when I finally confess my feelings? Your smile is my eternal torment. Your promise has become my obsession. Even if I become a Buddha under the Bodhi, I fear that I will not be able to let go of the entanglement in the mortal world. The song was called Buddha Says. Many years ago, while she was busy searching for the man in the upper bound, Yun Yanli was there, witnessing her effort. Every hope turned into disappointment again and again. The search was long and dreadful, so every time when she was idling, she would sing the song subconsciously. Perhaps the song was a better expression of how she truly felt. That was how Yun Yanli knew about the song. Gu Shizhou was shocked when Yun Yanli started singing along, but soon, as Gu Shizhou became more familiar with the song, the lyrics started coming back to her. Before Yun Yanli continued with the second part, she already took over. Buddha says too much. Life is overwhelming, with too much emotion. Love and hate tug back and forth. Everything will only end up in fire and fury. Buddha says it is wrong. Everything is just wrong. Blame everything on me, and just forget about me. Let the longing be silent, with a heart as silent as the lotus flowers. The solo had apparently become a duet. Both of them sang the lyrics correctly, without leaving any words unsung. Before, Gu Shijiu did not entirely trust Yun Yanli. But now, all her doubts had faded away. It was clear that she was the one who taught him how to use a sword. He could sing her songs. At least she could be sure that their friendship was legit. She took a look at Yun Yanli with a complicated feeling. Was Yun Yanli trying to help her recall her memory? He proceeded to help her, little by little. His kind and gentle gesture made her feel very comfortable with no pressure at all. For those who had lost their memory, they would often feel very lost and overwhelmed with a sense of emptiness. Deep down, Gu Shijiu really hoped that one day her memory would come back to her all at once. Di Fui's presence was not very helpful. He was not able to initiate and spring her into a vast recollection of her past. Instead, he emphasized to her that the loss of memory was nothing. The present was more important. As long as they were both in love, it was enough. She was touched by what he said back then, but it all seemed like a different case now. She realized that he seemed reluctant for her to have her memory back. Frustrated, she put in more strength while performing the last stitch. Yun Yanli bent down in pain and noticed something strange from a distance. He looked up and was immediately shocked. A man in pale green robes stood steadily on a tree not too far away. Gracefully, he stood upright on a branch. His curved eyebrows greatly complemented the smoldering look in his eyes. Tightly, he pursed his soft lips into a thin line to express his dissatisfaction. Nonetheless, his features were absolutely stunning. There he stood, expressionless while looking at both of them with an icy look. Gu Shijiu noticed him, too. She looked over to his direction, and their eyes met. Di Fui. She stood on her feet as soon as she recognized him. Chapter 22-21, Was he entitled to be angry? Di Fui continued to stand on the tree. The moon was hanging high up in the night sky behind him, forming a ring of light behind his figure and thus highlighting his silhouette. His robes swayed in the night breeze. However, his handsome face was not entirely observable in the absence of light, so they could barely see his expression. Di Fui? Is this how you address me? After their intimate relationship, Gu Shijiu had been calling him Fui to sound closer. Hence, it sounded strange to him. His indifferent tone of voice hung in the air. Gu Shijiu noticed the indignation in his words. It was always good when he was friendly and approachable. However, when he was angry, his aura was overbearing. After their reunion, Di Fui acted like a big brother to her. He had been trying to show his good and easygoing side in hopes to charm her. It was apparent to Gu Shijiu that he was angry, but what should he be angry about? Was he entitled to be angry? In fact, he refused to answer her calls even though he was fine. Was he trying to act cool? She had been worried for him all day long. There was a brief moment of relief the moment she found him. However, that relief was immediately replaced by an overwhelming sense of frustration. Looking to respond to his question, she looked at him with a tight smile. What do you prefer? Prince Nianma. Surprised, he then fixed his eyes on Yun Yanli. With a bow, Yun Yanli was ready to greet him with the proper courtesy that he would do in heaven. Prince Nianma, it is nice to meet you. Di Fui closed his eyes and then lunged forward and grabbed Gu Zijia's hand without giving any attention to Yun Yanli. Let us talk. His hand was cold, and the tightness of his grip was a little uncomfortable for her. Gu Shijiu pulled back her hand from his grasp and said, What is there to talk about? Did he want to talk to her because he knew that she had found out the truth? Gu Shijiu could not contain her frustration anymore. Prince Nianma, good to see you here. Now that Mr. Yun is here, I actually have a few questions for you, and I hope you can answer me honestly. Gu Shijiu felt that it would be beneficial to put everything forward so that she could find out the truth. Di Fui took a deep breath before answering, Great. Please proceed. Are you Shin Nianma, the son of the celestial god and demon? Yes. Are you at 7 this year? Yes, but I was already grown up when I was 3. We are not childhood friends. In fact, I can actually be considered as your parent, am I right? Indeed, we are not childhood friends, but my parents are more than 10,000 years old. You are only 200 years old. Do you really think you are in the same generation as them? Di Fui answered calmly. Gu Zijia's face slowly turned pale. Well, your level of cultivation is comparable to that of a great deity. I guess you are as good as my parents. Everything he said seemed to be aligned to Yun Yanli's sharing earlier. Gu Shizhou was disappointed, but slowly, she began to get angry. We were never engaged, right? Gu Shizhou gathered enough courage to finally ask the question. Di Fui hesitated in his response but eventually answered, yes. Although she had misspoken in the upper bound, about how she was interested in making him her little husband, it all turned out to be a misunderstanding. In fact, Gu Shizhou had cleared the misunderstanding in public. Gu Zijia's hand trembled in her sleeves. Why did you call yourself my fiancé? The misunderstanding had cost her the price of her virginity. Di Fui gave her a tight smile. Because I like you, so much that I am completely overwhelmed. Chapter 22:22, Why didn't he avoid the strike? Gu Shizhou did not know what to say. The conversation only made her more frustrated. How could he lie to her in such a vicious way, all because he liked her? How could he use her loss of memory as an excuse to lie to her? Did he even really like her? He was making use of her misfortune to serve his own ends. She hated it most when people lied to her, especially if it came from people that she really trusted. Before she saw Di Fui, she was still hoping that everything Yun Yanli told her was a lie. She hoped that Di Fui was the truthful one. Unfortunately, she would end up disappointed. She tried to suppress her anger before it took over her senses. Her aura grew stronger each passing moment. Are you Celestial Master Zhua? Were you Huang Tu, who used to be the Lord? The moment she asked the question, she immediately held her breath in a desperate wait for his answer. After a brief moment of silence, Di Fui finally confessed, no. In utter disbelief, Gu Zijia's body trembled. The crimson flush of indignation on her cheeks slowly faded. Her face was as pale as a sheet. Assuming that she had a husband, she could not accept that she had slept with another man. She clenched her fists, trying to suppress her urge to kill someone. She tried to keep calm for the last time and asked him with one final question, have you always known that I am engaged to another man? Did you know that I could already be someone else's wife? Under the moonlight, Di Fui's face looked ashen too. Yes, he briskly said. Gu Zijia's frustration exceeded her tolerable threshold. She clenched her fists and could no longer suppress the urge to hit him. Very well, Di Fui. I did not expect you to be such a despicable and shameless man. Fueled with anger, she aimed quite a powerful strike at him. The strike was accompanied by gusts of wind, stirring up the air and going straight up towards Di Fui. Bang! The strike ended up on Di Fui's chest. He lost his balance and took a few steps backward. Gu Shizhou had not expected the attack to really hurt him. Her heart wrenched for his injury. Why didn't he avoid the strike? He could have easily moved away with his kung fu. Was he trying to make her feel bad? Under the light, Di Fui stood up straight and looked at her fixedly. His eyes glistened with hope while he asked, can you kindly listen to my explanation? It was completely understandable that she would be mad when she found out the truth. It seemed that Di Fui was mentally prepared for the consequences. What is there to explain? Are you trying to say that you never lied to me? That you are the one I liked in the upper bound? Gu Shizhou added. Di Fui hesitated. I admit that I have lied to you and I am sorry, but Shizhou, the one that you have been looking for no longer exists. He was immortalized. There is no chance of resurrection for him. If you choose not to believe me, you can ask Yun Yanli about it. Frustration filled her heart. Gu Shizhou had already heard about the death of her loved one from Yun Yanli. She had forgotten about the man but was somehow obsessed with him. There must be some hope in his resurrection since she refused to give up the search for so many years. However, even if there was no chance to resurrect Huang Tu, Di Fui should not have used his death as an excuse to make his lie sound more reasonable. Driven by a sudden urge of indignation, she answered him scornfully, "So what if he no longer exists? He is the one I like, not you. I do not like the dirty tricks that you have used to approach me. Di Fui, I look down on you." Di Fui was shocked by her brutal honesty. Chapter 22-23, perhaps, you are not even as good as me. It was his fault, so he was willing to suffer the consequences. Shijiu, I know that I have made a mistake. I will make it up to you in the future. How are you going to make it up to me? Di Fui, do you really think that I will marry you? Puzzled, he stared at her silently. Shijiu, don't say something you will regret. We have already, Gu Shijiu laughed out loud before giving him a serious reply, had intimacy. Do you really think that I will resign to fate and marry you after discovering the dirty tricks that you have played on me? Is this why you initiated the whole plan, to act first and apologize later? Let me tell you, Di Fui, that it is impossible. I always have and always will love Huang Tu, Celestial Master Zhua. As long as I live, I will always be his woman. I will never marry you. Di Fui's face could not hide his emotions. Di Fui, you should leave. From this day onwards, we shall never cross paths ever again. We shall keep ourselves away from one another. Please do not show up in front of me again. I am disgusted by the sight of you. Gu Shijiu trembled in extreme indignation. The truth was too much for her to take. Di Fui was such a great liar. How could he trick her into believing a false version of the truth? Who did he think she was? Swiftly, she turned around and disappeared. Meanwhile, the two had completely disregarded Yun Yanli's presence all this while. Shijiu. Yun Yanli called out loud. She must be outraged, so much so that she had completely forgotten about him. He turned around and looked at Di Fui. Prince Nianma, I did not know that you and Gu Shijiu had gone through so many stages in your relationship. Di Fui gave him a stern look in return but did not say anything. Yun Yanli sighed and raised his hand in defense. Prince Nianma, I did not know that you chose to hide so many things from her. What you have done is, indeed, inappropriate. You have no right to interfere, Di Fui answered in an annoyed tone. Yun Yanli shook his head in disapproval before giving him a stern response, Prince Nianma, I have no intention to interfere with things that are irrelevant to me. However, Shijiu has been a friend of mine for many years. Our friendship is not something that you can understand, for you are still young. I really do not wish to see her being tricked in such a bad way. Friend? Are you really, her friend? Di Fui sounded a little hostile. Yun Yanli answered calmly, yes. With a tight smile, he added, she is the only friend that I will ever have in my life. I am here in the Shuro world only because of her. This barren land is not suitable for her. He then took another 2 steps towards Di Fui and said, Prince Nianma, you chose to have her trapped in this place all because of your personal intention. It is disgraceful. You certainly have not expected that she and I would meet here, right? You should know that no secret can be kept hidden forever. Di Fui stood still. His presence alone was intimidating. Yun Yanli, you have become more courageous since you got here. How dare you talk to me like that? When the two met in the upper bound, Yun Yanli used to be very courteous and polite. Amused by his comment, Yun Yanli gave him a laugh. He then stared at Di Fui fixedly and answered with a sarcastic smile, Prince Nianma, you are the son of the celestial god and demon in the upper bound. People respect you and keep a distance from you to avoid any trouble from your parents, but here, what is the difference between you and me? He took another step forward and teased, perhaps, you are not even as good as me. Chapter 22-24, Did she change her mind? He used to be a gentle and soft-hearted gentleman who was friendly with everyone. However, the way he teased Di Fui was completely different from how he used to be. His aura suddenly became overbearing, strong enough to affect his surroundings. Leaves were shed from the trees as a result of his powerful influence. All of a sudden, Gu Shijiu reappeared right in front of them. Yun Yanli's expression changed abruptly the moment he saw her. He took a step back and said, "Shijiu, why are you back again?" His powerful aura completely disappeared in an instant, and he was friendly again to her. Di Fui's eyes flickered with a sense of hope. He fixed his eyes on Gu Shijiu. Did she change her mind? Was she here for him? Gu Shijiu ignored him completely and turned her attention to Yun Yanli. Why are you still here? Do you still want to go to the city? With a nod, Yun Yanli gave her a firm confirmation. Yes. Let's go. Gu Shijiu wanted to turn around and leave again. Wait a minute. Di Fui finally broke his silence. However, Gu Shijiu did not stop. Suddenly, shimmering crystal flew before Gu Zijia's eyes and placed itself safely in her hands. Di Fui explained calmly, "This is a Class 1 spiritual crystal. Send it to Yiling to accomplish the mission." Gu Shijiu stopped to observe the spiritual crystal that he offered. She smiled, but he could not be sure if she were amused or being sarcastic. Soon, she turned around and threw the spiritual crystal back to him. "Thank you, but I do not anything from you." The spiritual crystal landed right next to Di Fui's feet. Along with the crystal, there was another storage bag. It was a gift from him to Gu Shijiu before. It appeared that Gu Shijiu wanted to cut ties with him completely. Swiftly, she pulled Yun Yanli away and left. Yun Yanli followed her, but before he left, he gave Di Fui another curious look. Di Fui stood completely still in the shade of a tree. He looked away, and there was no light on his face for anyone to tell his expression. His hair and robes danced in the gusts of wind. Even for a man as powerful as him, at the end of the day, he was left alone. "Shijiu, are you still looking for a Class 1 spiritual crystal?" At this point, they were already far away from Di Fui. They were entering a valley in the remote forest. She hummed absent-mindedly. Her hands were still cold. Why? Yun Yanli was curious. "To save my people," Gu Shijiu answered briefly. A conversation was the last thing that she wanted to have at the moment. Yun Yanli saw the pale look on her beautiful face and sighed. "All right, I will help you." He reassured her. Gu Shijiu seemed concerned about his well-being. "You are injured. You should go to the city now. I can find a Class 1 spiritual stone myself." The beasts that possessed a Class 1 spiritual stone were very powerful. She was no match to the beasts without knowing their weakness. Yun Yanli said nothing more and searched into his pocket. Soon, he presented her with a spiritual stone, shining. "Shijiu, look at this. What do you think it is?" Astonished, Gu Shijiu could tell that it was a Class 1 spiritual crystal. "You have got it, too." Gu Shijiu was impressed. "How did you get it?" She witnessed the battle between him and a Class 2 beast. It was a tough fight, and he won because she helped him. A Class 1 beast was far more powerful than what he had faced, and he somehow defeated it. Yun Yanli seemed to understand the thoughts running through her mind. Smilingly, he explained, "Shijiu, when I first came here, my spiritual power was much stronger. A Class 1 beast emerged all of a sudden, so I fought it off and acquired the stone. I have been keeping it for a while. Now, you can use it to save your people." Gu Shijiu did not quite understand his offer. She asked, "Do you know the use of this spiritual stone? It will greatly restore your spiritual power, especially this one. It is not something you can get every day." Yun Yanli sighed. "Shijiu, I have been here for quite a while. Surely, I know the unique application of this spiritual stone. Why did you give it to me, then?" Find authorized novels in webnovel faster updates, better experience. Please click www.webnovel.com for visiting. Yun Yanli pulled her hand and put the crystal on her palm. "Shijiu, like I said, I am a friend. I am a friend who you can trust for life. If you take me as a friend, then accept it. Gu Shijiu was touched by his kind gesture. She finally accepted the crystal and thanked him. Great. I really appreciate it. She made a mental note that she would collect another spiritual stone of the same power and return it to him someday. She did not like to owe anyone anything. Yun Yanli was relieved at her acceptance. That is all right. He smiled. Gu Shijiu offered him a Class 2 spiritual stone. Please absorb this one. Yun Yanli did not hesitate and accepted the crystal. All right, let us absorb its power together. He closed his eyes and absorbed half of the spiritual power contained in the crystal. Then, he passed it back to Gu Shijiu. You should take the other half. Gu Shijiu turned down his offer and said, Don't worry, you can have it all. Although she wanted to become stronger, she did not want to share the spiritual stone with Yun Yanli. All right, I will do as you say. Yun Yanli finally agreed and finished the other half while meditating. When he opened his eyes again, he saw Gu Shijiu still standing in front of him. She seemed to be deep in thought as she stared blankly into the emptiness. His eyes darkened as he suggested hesitantly, Shijiu, if you are worried about him, you can go back and have a look. Gu Shijiu finally recovered from her contemplations and was ready to leave. No need. We shall head to the city. Di Fui's kung fu was stronger than hers, so she did not feel the need to check on him. Now that she was no longer looking for him, she could skip the time-consuming search and teleport directly to the city. Together with Yun Yanli, she took a few turns and arrived at Luohua City shortly after. First thing first, Gu Shijiu had to visit her people. They were fine, proving that her threat worked. He no longer gave her people a difficult time. The men still had to deal with the most tiring jobs, but at least the women were not required to work in the brothel anymore. They were assigned to sweep and clean the streets. They were relieved to see Gu Shijiu again. Immediately, they greeted her warmly. Certainly, the handsome man next to Gu Shijiu had also caught many curious eyes. Gu Shijiu did not want to talk too much about him. This is my friend, Mr. Yun Yanli, she briefly introduced him to the people. Yun Yanli was an amiable, young gentleman who treated everyone equally with grace and respect. Smilingly, he greeted the people with enthusiasm. The people were welcoming. Yun Yanli was a guest of Gu Shijiu, so they greeted him warmly in return by offering handshakes or gentle taps on the shoulder. Their hands were actually dirty, covered in a layer of dust, but Yun Yanli did not mind any of it. He returned all handshakes with a firm grip. Gu Shijiu watched the entire friendly exchange and was not sure of what to feel. She remembered the first time they met Di Fui and were eager to get friendly with him. Chapter 22-26, Have you broken up with Mr. D? When the villagers first met Di Fui, they wanted to shake hands with him to greet him, but he refused to, pretending like he never saw the approaching hands. He was very arrogant toward them. When someone touched him, he would flick his robes to clear away the dust. It was a sign of him thinking that these people were dirty. Also, he had the habit of insulting people and being very sarcastic to them. Most of the time, he would go to the extreme and shut them up once and for all. Thus, they no longer dared to approach him, avoiding every chance of a conversation. He also often kept himself away from the villagers. He once said that if it were not for Gu Shijiu, he would not even care about the lives of these people at all. Yun Yanli, on the other hand, had also descended from the upper bound and possessed a noble background, but he was not arrogant at all. He was amiable, exactly like the celestial beings that were often thought to be compassionate. Obviously, he was very different from Di Fui. She was caught in her own contemplation when Chun Chao suddenly pulled her aside and spoke to her in private. Shijiu, this man is very handsome. I think he likes you. That is not true. Gu Shijiu quickly corrected her. He is only a friend to me, so am I to him. There is nothing more between us. Chun Chao was a little disappointed by the response. The women from the clan were not very concerned about their chastity. They had their absolute freedom to be with anyone they liked. In fact, Chun Chao had been with 3 different men in the clan. To be adored by many men was a privilege and an honor. Therefore, Chun Chao thought that Brother Stone, being someone who was so strong and capable, deserved to have several men by her side, even if it was at the same time. Do you really only like Di Fui? Do you want to commit your life to him? Chun Chao happened to say something that she should not have. Gu Zijia's facial expression seemed to have changed as the conversation dropped into a dead silence. Don't mention him. We have already broken up. Chun Chao was obviously surprised. What? Why? Gu Shizhou did not want to talk much about it. No specific reason. We are just not compatible with each other. Puzzled, Chun Chao then continued, are you sure? Both of you look great together. We are envious of your relationship. Why did you say that you were incompatible all of a sudden? Chun Chao was a little loud, so she managed to attract the attention of the people around her. Brother Stone, have you broken up with Mr. D? Brother Stone, why would you do so? Brother Stone, I thought both of you were doing great. Last night, you were still together. Why did you break up so suddenly? The discussion continued. Their judgments and questions were too much for Gu Shizhou to handle. Obviously annoyed, she could no longer suppress her irritation and lashed out at them. Are you really so free? Don't you have work to do tomorrow? Go back and sleep now. As she was very well respected in the clan. Once they saw how annoyed she was, they stopped making any comments. Tai Dan was concerned and added, Shizhou, has he done something wrong to you? Is that why you are so angry? I was just wondering why he came back so suddenly and looked for you in a rush. Now I see why. Gu Shizhou was astonished. What? Did he come back? When? About 4 hours ago. He asked many of us about your whereabouts, but none of us knew where you were. Yes. From his expression, he seemed quite anxious. He did not receive any news from us, so he went to see Governor Yi. Gu Shizhou did not know what to say. 4 hours ago, she was still in the depths of the forest. It was the time she met Yun Yanli and was looking for Di Fui. Chapter 22-27, we can look for him together at that moment. Gu Shizhou recalled that the magical butterfly was pointing in the direction of Luohua City. Was Di Fui really in the city when Yun Yanli had cast the spell? If he were frantically looking for her in the city, why wouldn't he pick up her call? She tried to contact him with her directed audio spell so many times. Did his device malfunction? Di Fui had always been a prudent man in everything he did. He certainly knew the importance of his directed audio spell. How did it break down in just a day? If his direction audio spell had failed, the only way he could locate her was to go from place to place. After meeting Yi Ling, he would definitely know that she had left the city. He must have come into the woods to look for her after visiting the city. However, the forest was such a vast land. How did he find her so quickly? Gu Shizhou recalled Di Fui's appearance when he first showed up. Her heart immediately sank as he seemed to be in a real mess. He would usually present himself in very neat clothes without even the slightest crumple. This time, however, he showed up in very loose robes with a few bloodstains. His complexion was pale. Was he hurt? Perhaps she was just too angry with him to observe it earlier. She stood there deeply absorbed in her concerns. Shizhou. Shizhou. Yun Yanli called her name while slowly approaching her. If you are worried about him, we can look for him together. Gu Shizhou had never been so grumpy before. There is no need. You should rest. It has been a long day. It was late at night. The only 3 persons left on the square were Gu Shizhou, Yun Yanli, and the clan leader, Hua Zhichuan. Gu Shizhou did not want to talk to anyone at all. All she needed was a quiet place to sort out her thoughts, so she left swiftly. Yun Yanli stood and watched as she slowly disappeared. He wanted to say something, but the words just could not come out. He seemed lost. Mr. Yun, do you have a place to stay? Hua Zhichuan kindly asked. Slightly embarrassed, Yun Yanli answered with a tight smile, No, it is my first time here. Mr. Yun, if you do not mind, I can clean up a space in the empty house for you. It is a little shabby, though. It is good enough, thank you. Yun Yanli thanked him while giving him a bow. Hua Zhichuan heaved a sigh of relief. Mr. Yun was exceptionally friendly, a character that was the complete opposite from Mr. D. Mr. Yun, you managed to source a Class 1 spiritual crystal for us, thus, securing a place to stay for us all, which is something that we will always be grateful for. I only hope that you will not mind this house that is in poor condition. Gu Shijiu had told Hua Zhichuan about the source of the Class 1 spiritual crystal, so he was really grateful to Yun Yanli. Immediately, he assigned some men to get the house ready. Yun Yanli accepted the offer promptly. Once again, Yun Yanli thanked him before entering the house. Where will Shijiu sleep tonight? He was concerned. Hua Zhichuan answered ambiguously, she has her own place to stay, you do not have to worry about her, Mr. Yun. Yun Yanli said nothing more. After bidding goodbye to Hua Zhichuan, he entered the house. In the faraway depths of the woods, tens of miles away, a man stood on a tree. The land glittered under the pale moonlight. A warm breeze whispered through the trees. The leaves danced in the gusting wind. Some beasts could be heard howling from time to time, adding a sense of isolation in an utterly quiet place. For the first time, Di Fui no longer cared about his appearance. He leaned against the tree. Pale as a sheet, he closed his eyes to take a rest. He rested his head on the trunk for support while slowly meditating. Chapter 22-28, bearing the consequences of his own doings. Cold sweat slowly broke out from his forehead and traced the skin of his soft, supple cheeks all the way down to his jaw. He did not care to wipe the droplets away. He sat quietly in the woods, conveying a sense of desolation. In a faraway land of another world, there was a high mountain. There was a huge, snowy white stone with a smooth and clear surface. Within sight, there was a landscape of hills and waters. There were some people there, too. Shinjiuli and Ning Xuema stood before the stone and watched everything that happened on the other side of the world. There was no audio for them, so it was just like a silent movie. They found out the function of the stone by accident. With a few drops of their blood and some specific spells, they could see what their closest relation was doing. The only closest relation they had was their son, Shin Nianma. He was also referred to as Di Fui. They had been watching the scenario for more than 2 hours. They saw their son searching for the lady frantically in the woods. With a sudden inspiration, he found a way to track her path. The couple also saw everything that happened later. Ning Suimo's expression was gloomy. As a mother, she was not able to tolerate her son's mistreatment. Her heart ached terribly for him. This is terrible. She clenched her fists in frustration. How could she be so ungrateful? Everything that Nianma has done is for her benefit, but the way she reacted was terribly hurtful. Calmly, Shinjiuli kept his composure. The child has wronged her. Don't you think that the lady deserves to be angry? He sighed. Hesitantly, Ning Xuema continued, she surely should be angry, but she should not have said those hurtful things to Nianma. He is still young. He is not ready for this heavy blow. She tried to conceal the shortcomings of her child. Shinjiuli did not want to comment on her misjudgment. Instead, he pulled her closer at her waist and said, Xuema, Nianma is no longer a child. As a man, these are catastrophes that he is meant to go through. The lady is one of the many challenges that he has to face. Catastrophe? Ning Xuema panicked. What kind of catastrophe? What kind of catastrophe has the heavenly law designed for him this time? His childhood has been catastrophic enough. Ning Xuema seemed to have some serious grudge against the heavenly law, as both Shinjiuli and her were deeply affected by the heavenly arrangements. With a cough, he looked at his son in the image of the mirror. The child was bearing the consequences of his own doings. Even as the most respectable master of the heavenly law, he would still have to suffer the same consequences as a result of forcibly changing fate. However, it was good for him to understand the implications of his action. When he finally became the master of the heavenly law, he would be mature enough not to abuse the laws. Shinjioli made a mental note to himself, when the child finally regained his power, he would sit down and have a good chat with him to talk about his experiences. Also, he would like to tease him for what he had been through. Amused at the thought, Shinjioli could not help but let out a satisfactory smile. How can you laugh after seeing what your son has been through? Ning Xuema questioned him. The smile immediately disappeared and was replaced by the same level of grudge that Ning Xuema shared. Xuema, you are right. The heavenly law is indeed ridiculous. There was an abrupt change in Ning Xuemo's expression. She held on to his sleeves, anxiously, and asked, have you foreseen anything? Is Nianma going through a major catastrophe? Will his life be at stake? Will his soul be shattered? Shinjioli shook his head. Don't worry. It will not be serious. Ning Xuema was instantly relieved, but still in doubt. Haven't you mentioned before that Nianmo's fate is too complicated to be foretold? Chapter 22-29, The courage to fight against the master of the heavenly law for the same woman. His fate was not complicated. He was the only master of his own fate with no one else to interfere. Moreover, the soul of the master of heavenly law would not be fragmented. Instead, he would only return to his position sooner. Shinjioli thought about one thing, but said another, I cannot tell his fate. I am merely making assumptions from his behavior and know that there will not be a catastrophe that he cannot go through. Sufferings will only make him grow. See, he managed to use the tracking spell when he needed it the most. It sounded reasonable. Quietly, Ning Xuema continued to observe the images. On the display, Gu Shizhou had already left angrily, leaving Yun Yanli and Di Fui behind. The more Ning Xuema looked at Yun Yanli, the more unpleasant she felt about him. Although she could not hear anything from the images, she knew how to read their lips to understand their conversation. After a while, she commented, Prince Yun seems to like Gu Shizhou as well. From what I see, he seems to be interested in the pursuit of the same woman. Who does he think he is? Puzzled, Shinjioli added hesitantly, Xuema, according to the heavenly law, Prince Yun and the lady are destined to be together. It is our son who decided to interfere. Ning Xuema was astonished. Ah! She could not quite accept that her son was actually the third will who came between the destined couple. Shinjioli heaved a sigh in silence. In their previous life, Di Fui and Gu Shizhou were only meant to be in a master-disciple relationship. It was him who decided to change their fates forcibly after falling for the lady unintentionally. Therefore, he had to suffer the consequences now. Ning Xuema continued to observe Yun Yanli. I do not think that the man is all that simple, there is something strange about his aura. He seemed to bear an aura of something stronger and darker. Others would not be able to tell the difference, but as the great devil, Ning Xuema was sensitive about dark auras. She was able to sense something evil, even from the images of the mirror. There was a profound look in Shinjuli's eyes. Obviously, he had noticed the oddity, too. He must be a strong man to be able to compete with the son of the celestial god and devil. The man is indeed no ordinary man, he added casually. He could not help but tease the man for his courage to fight against the master of the heavenly law for the same woman. The man was doomed to have a difficult time. If Di Fui were to go all out, no one else stood a chance. Therefore, Prince Yun was bound to suffer some unpleasant experiences. Silently, Shinjioli gave Yun Yanli a prayer to wish him luck. While watching, Ning Xuema suddenly panicked again. I can tell that Yun Yanli is planning something evil against Nianma. He is too weak to be his match at the moment. Frowningly, Shinjioli thought the same as well. Yun Yanli obviously had scruples about Di Fui, so he did not launch his strike at first. He tried to figure out Di Fui's strength throughout their conversation. Di Fui had surely noticed his intention, so he remained calm and tried to keep him away. However, Yun Yanli did not seem to believe his words so easily. The couple predicted that he would make his first strike very soon. By then, Nianma would be at a great disadvantage. Shinjioli took joy in his son's embarrassments but not his disadvantages. Although he had seen everything, there was nothing he could do to help, for they were a few worlds apart. The figure of a woman suddenly emerged on the rock. Gu Zijia's sudden appearance had softened the intense atmosphere between the two men who were having a confrontation. Soon, Yun Yanli's dark aura disappeared completely. He returned to his usual image of a kind, friendly man. Then, Gu Shizhou appeared and disappeared in an instant, along with Yun Yanli. Ning Xuema and Shinjioli were both relieved. Although Gu Zijia's return had added another round of verbal abuse to their son, they were glad that he was safe. Chapter 2230, Everything had its vanquisher. Ning Xuema continued to observe her son, who was now sitting and leaning against the tree for a quick rest. She was very concerned. He seems to be badly injured. The forest is not safe with the presence of all kinds of ferocious beasts. He might be attacked by the beasts any time. Shinjioli waved his sleeve to turn off the images on the white stone. Xuema, a fond mother will always spoil her son. Ning Xuema was speechless. She was only concerned for her son, who had gone through many challenges in life even before he was even born. Thus, she became anxious. She did not want to lose her son. All she wanted was for him to stay well and safe. Don't worry. With his kung fu, the ferocious beasts are not able to harm him even when he is injured. He will not be taken away from us so easily, Shinjioli reassured her. I am only worried that Yun Yanli might come back and plot something evil against him. After all, I have indirectly caused the death of his father. He might use Nianma as a vent for his grudge. The more Ning Xuema thought about it, the more worried she became. Should we go to Shura World? Apart from rescuing our son away from the place, we can go and study the land. I still think that something is wrong about the place. Shinjioli disagreed, not necessary. He is able to handle it on his own. Let it be a challenge for him. All children should be trained before they could go on their own paths. A timid bird under protection would not be able to soar into the air. Instead of a common bird, the boy was destined to soar like a kuanpeng, the legendary, gigantic bird in the common myths. Once a kuanpeng spreads its wings, it would rise like a cyclone. This was exactly what was going to happen when the boy finally realized who he really was. Once he made an effort, there was going to be a tremendous change in all the worlds under his guidance. Especially those who had been deliberately perverse to him, they were going to suffer when the time came. As for Shura World, there was indeed something strange about the place. However, Shinjioli believed that the boy was able to correct everything wrong about the place when he finally returned to heaven. The Master of Heavenly Law was noted to have an eccentric appearance and unconventional behavior. He was already used to sitting up high in a leading position with absolute control over everything. When he was Huang Tu, it was exactly how he behaved, all superior and high above. Even when he was in a relationship with Gu Shizhou, he was the one who had the final say about everything. This time, the way he behaved around Gu Shizhou was something new. Was he trying to make up for his past regrets? In their past relationship, Gu Shizhou once said that she wanted to become someone who could fight alongside the one she loved, for example, Long Shi. Perhaps, he had made an attempt to conceal his true strength and transform into another identity of the same power as Gu Shizhou to share the journey with her. The Master of Heavenly Law had taken many different forms of embodiment in the lower bound. He had had a great time with absolutely nothing to worry about, winding people around his fingers freely and leisurely just to have fun. This time, he finally met with someone that he could not deal with. Was it true that everything had its vanquisher? Shinjioli looked a little distracted, so Ning Xuema thought that he was worried about their son. I still think that our son is too young. She sighed. Young? The child's actual age was unpredictable, even Shinjioli had no idea how old the Master of Heavenly Law truly was. Surely, he was many, many years older than both of them. Perhaps, he had lived as long as heaven and earth existed. Shinjioli and Ning Xuema were another generation younger than the Master of Heavenly Law. As for now, Shinjioli was simply delighted to have become the father for the master of heavenly law. He hoped that when the boy finally returned to his power, he would still call Shinjioli as his father without any grudge or awkwardness. Note: 1. Kuenpeng are massive beasts that look like hybrids of fish and birds. http://mythical-bestiary. Wikia.com/wiki/Kuenpeng. Chapter 2231, How Can Your Single Eyelids Be So Ugly? The master of heavenly law was unusually arrogant. When he descended to the Saha world, he never wanted to have a mother. Usually, he would take the form of a mortal being without going through the birth-giving process. This time, however, his reincarnation had brought him to his mother. For a while, his childlike form had given much delight to his parents. It had rarely happened before. Shinjioli was proud of himself. Nevertheless, he still believed that the child was not going to acknowledge him as his father in the future. He considered having another child, a child of normal descent. Also, a new baby in the family would be able to distract his wife's attention on the boy. Di Fui sat under the tree. With his eyes closed, he managed to have a bit of rest. After a while, he opened his eyes and observed the Class 1 spiritual stone by his feet. He picked up the crystal that was abandoned by Gu Shizhou not long ago and let out a sarcastic smile. He risked his life to get the crystal, but she cast it aside like an old shoe that she no longer needed. The time given by Yiling was 3 days. After 3 days, they must submit a Class 1 spiritual stone to him or be banished. He knew that she cared about her people, so he left the city early in the morning to look for the right type of Chinese alligator that bore a Class 1 spiritual stone. However, it was not an easy search. He managed to find 3 Chinese alligators, but none of them had the Class 1 spiritual stone that he needed. The process was very time-consuming and physically draining. His directed audio spell was gone when a Class 1 Chinese alligator suddenly emerged. He was worried about Gu Shizhou, for he had not bid goodbye to her before he left in the morning. He wanted to call her via his directed audio spell and tell her not to worry about anything. That was the moment when the Chinese alligator attacked from behind all of a sudden. His slight distraction from the directed audio spell got him injured from the ambush. Furthermore, his directed audio spell was gone in the gusting winds caused by the beast. The beast that he had to face was a real challenge. It was obviously incredibly powerful. It was also the strongest one that he ever faced. It could spray poisonous mist and be also able to transform into human form. This time, it took the embodiment of a beautiful, sassy woman. The woman was as venomous as snakes and scorpions. Its entire body was covered in venomous stings. It tempted him with a seductive stance and tried to control his mind with an illusion spell. Fortunately, the woman's illusion spell did not work. Di Fui's sword had never stopped aiming at its eyes. Every move and every strike was aimed at its eyes. For a few times, he almost tore its eyelids apart. In a thundering rage, it questioned his interest in its eyes. Di Fui's frank answer sent the woman back to its original form. I do not like seeing your eyes. How can your single eyelids be so ugly? The Chinese alligator was enraged, so much so that it almost turned into its most evil form. The beast was very powerful. In a proper fight, Di Fui was hardly its match. As the beast was so clouded by its rage, it was not able to think and fight properly. Its mistakes were as many as its moves, though powerful. In the end, Di Fui was able to find its weakness and kill it. Unfortunately, he was severely injured as well. Even though he was not really concerned about his external injuries, the Chinese alligator bore a special kind of poison that was able to affect his immune system despite his strong resistance. After the painstaking battle, another weaker Chinese alligator attacked him before he had the time to cure the poison in his body. Chapter 2232, All favors must be returned. In the end, the smaller Chinese alligator was the sibling of the Chinese alligator that he had just killed. It was merely a Class 2 beast. The beast worked itself into a frenzy of rage upon witnessing the death of its loved one, so Di Fui had no choice but to fight it off. When the fight was over, the poison in his body began to take effect and attack his organs. He almost lost his life in the forest. After a long period of meditation, he was finally able to expel the toxin. Nonetheless, the poison had already harmed his body before the expulsion. His spiritual power was thus greatly reduced. After losing his directed audio spell, he was concerned that Gu Shizhou might be worried about his safety. Once he was healthy enough, he immediately ran back into the city, only to realize that she was not there. He asked around and found out that Yi Ling had summoned her. Yi Ling seemed to harbor evil intentions. Di Fui knew that very well. For fear that she would be in an unfavorable circumstance, he immediately went to Yi Ling's place to see her. As cunning as a fox, a devious idea came to him as soon as he saw Di Fui. Struggling with the poison in his body, he wanted to capture Di Fui and hold him as a hostage. He would use him as leverage to get what he wanted. He wanted to make her obey. In order to capture Di Fui, he sent out every man in his force. The result was miserable for the governor. Mr. D seemed graceful and indolent, but he was actually a very good fighter. Every move was brutal and on point. Half of Yi Ling's men were severely injured. With one careless move, Yi Ling was held hostage too. Yi Ling finally realized that he was not a match to Mr. D. Under threat, he was sensible enough to tell him the truth. Yi Ling spent an enormous effort to convince Di Fui that Gu Shizhou was not in his hands. Instead, he was actually the victim who was still waiting for her cure. Di Fui was finally sure that Gu Shizhou had left the city. Many dangers were lingering in the dark outside. Therefore, as the sky grew darker, her safety would be threatened even more. Her current level of kung fu was not able to keep her safe and alive. Like a cat on hot bricks, he was very worried for her safety. Without his directed audio spell, there was no way he could contact her. To locate a person in a vast land of woods was like looking for a needle in a haystack. He saw some movements in the forest, where a tree was shaking violently, but she was not there. There were only some beasts fighting in the wild. Under pressure, a sudden inspiration occurred to him, a way to locate someone easily. With the spell, he could pinpoint her location very precisely. The only con was that the spell would drain a huge amount of his spiritual power. After a long day, he was now the equivalent of a spent arrow. He was not supposed to use the spell anymore, but he could not care less about his condition. He was worried that if he waited a little longer, the only remains that he could find were her bones. Therefore, he was determined to find her regardless of the consequences. He was able to recognize Yun Yanli at first sight, but his spirits dampened as soon as he saw him. His heart sank at the realization that his secret would inevitably be exposed. All favors must be returned in the end. All lies would be uncovered. He was ready for the revelation, but he did not expect that it would happen so soon. He wanted to be the one to tell her the truth, not someone else. Nonetheless, it was all too late. He knew that she would be enraged, but what she said was really hurtful. He never knew that a few words would hurt him so much. Chapter 22:33. He had failed so thoroughly he took a look at his hands and then closed his eyes in contemplation. Di Fuyu that her memory was slowly recovering. To his dismay, the first person that she thought of was still Huang Tu, who was also known as Celestial Master Zhua. In the fragments of her memories, the man still existed. Huang Tu was still the one that she cared about the most. As for him, he was nothing but her mission, the last hope for her to bring her deceased love back alive. Furthermore, after all this time, he was only a junior to her. He was also the only one that had unfortunately fallen in love. He was, unfortunately, trapped in a love that was not mutual. He did not know when he started to have feelings for her. He did not know how he got himself so madly in love with her. He thought that their coexistence in the Shura world was his second chance. Without any memory of her past, he believed that it was a great time for him to compete with her deceased lover. There would not be any age gap between them and her obsession with Huang Tu would not come and haunt them. He wanted to make her fall in love with him completely. If he succeeded, he hoped that when her memory was finally returned to her someday, she would choose to stay with him. He would be the one she truly loved at that moment. He would take responsibility for her. Nevertheless, nothing happened as planned. Her love for Huang Tu was unmoving, deeply immersed in every inch of her flesh and bones. It had become her intuition. As for their current relationship, it was merely a false illusion. As the surface of the water, a small stone would be enough to ripple the entire image. Let me tell you, Di Fui, that it is impossible. I have always been and always will love Huang Tu, Celestial Master Zhua. As long as I live, I will always be his woman. I will never marry you. Di Fui, you should leave. From this day onwards, we shall never cross paths ever again. We shall keep ourselves away from one another. Please do not show up in front of me again. I am disgusted by the sight of you. No matter what he did, he would never be able to replace the one in her heart. He had failed so thoroughly. Gu Shijiu, I have been asking for too much. He mumbled, followed by a few violent coughs. He could not stop coughing and felt as if he was about to cough his lungs out. His frequent coughing was the only sound that he could hear in the quiet forest. Apparently, he had attracted dozens of ferocious beasts, as they started to howl in response to the sound he made. Under normal circumstance, these beasts would not be able to harm him at all. But now, he refused to even defend himself. Step by step, the wild animals approached him and slowly revealed their sharp fangs. Gu Shijiu felt that she was in a dilemma. Obviously, she was furious at him, so much so that she wanted to make a clean break. At the same time, the only thing that filled her mind was her thought of him. She recalled all of his expressions and words from the beginning when they first met until the very last moment when they broke up. She still remembered his face when he claimed to be her fiancé, his smile when he teased her, and his disappointment when their relationship fell apart. After a brief walk, she found herself in the inn, and before she knew it, she was back in the room. Di Fui reserved the room for her. If she was really determined for a clean break, she should leave the room immediately and check out in order to uphold her unyielding character. However, now that she was in the room, she could not find the courage to leave. She tried to convince herself by saying that it was already too late to find another place to stay. It was only a night, and she would leave tomorrow to look for a new room. In the end, she stayed in the room but was not able to calm down. She was in a state of agitation. Although she tried to meditate, most of her attention was actually focused on the room next door. Di Fui's room was right next to hers, so she could definitely hear the sound of the door when he returned. However, she heard nothing, even after 2 hours. Her teleportation made her journey to the city with Yun Yanli much quicker. However, he should have been back by now. Chapter 2234, Where would Di Fui be? Why was he not back yet? With his speed and ability, he should be back by now. After another hour of silence, she could no longer sit still. Without much thought, she decided to teleport into his room. Perhaps he had already quietly come back. After all, his kung fu was great. Also, the interior of his room was completely soundproof. What she saw in the room made it clear that he never returned. The room was cold, and the sheets were still neat. Did he plan not to come back anymore? Did her words really hurt him that much? Or had he moved into another room to avoid the awkwardness? He could always find a way to get the best things for himself. Had he chosen to live somewhere else? The man had always been conceited and arrogant. Perhaps he could not take the embarrassment that she made him suffer. Many speculations popped out in her head, every single one sounded equally reasonable. Gu Shijiu could barely calm her anxious heart. Upon pondering about the situation, she was determined to teleport straight out of the city. She wanted to see if he was still around the place where they broke up. The full moon was hanging high up in the sky. Certainly, she was not expecting rain on a night as beautiful as the one she witnessed. It was a downpour with seemingly no end. Gu Shijiu took a look at the moon, then to the rain that was beating down heavily on the ground. She could not help but curse in the rain. It was very strange to have a downpour while the moon was still shining brightly in the sky. Everything was indeed unpredictable in Shura world. She was now about 100 miles away from the city. She had to teleport at least 7 times to get here. During her journey, some beasts would occasionally emerge. She would avoid them if she could, otherwise, she would fight them off with her sword. The rain came down in torrents. There was a spell that she could use to form a wizardry barrier to shelter her from the rain. However, she was completely exhausted after a long day. Both her physical strength and spiritual power were inadequate to support the wizardry barrier. If she insisted on forming the wizardry barrier, she would barely have any strength left to fight the beasts. After only a while in the rain, she was thoroughly soaked. Nonetheless, she was finally back to the place. The broken branches of the surrounding trees stayed the same. The remains of the shattered stones were still there. However, the only thing missing was Di Fui. She took 3 turns around the place and its surroundings, but could not see Di Fui anywhere. The downpour blurred her vision. Also, the rain had removed all the signs that could possibly be used to track him down. Gu Shijiu stood under a tree to take shelter. Irritated, she quickly wiped away the droplets on her face. How could he stand waiting here when it was raining so heavily? Even without the rain, he should have been long gone after all this time. Upon contemplation, Gu Shijiu realized that it was a really dumb action for her to run in the rain, only to realize that he was long gone. Gu Shijiu had always thought that she was smart, but her bad decisions today had made her think otherwise. Luckily, the rain was normal, not corrosive like the blood rain. Nevertheless, she could not help but shiver in the cold. She had been running many different errands over the past few days. She had not had a proper rest or a proper meal for that matter. She felt weak, and both her legs started to tremble. She took a look at the surrounding trees. Under the rain, the forest seemed endless. Where would Di Fui be? She had been to every corner of the specific place and its surroundings, but could not even find a trace of his presence. Therefore, she believed that none of the animals had attacked him. Otherwise, there would definitely be some signs of his clothes or some remains on the ground. Perhaps, he had really returned to the city. Due to the vast land of the forest, it was certainly easy to miss out on him anyway. Under the torrential rain, she decided to teleport away and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Shortly after she left, a figure appeared on a big tree. This man was wearing a black robe and had a purple jade crown on his head. There was a mask on his face so his identity was not revealed. It felt like he had been covered by a dark cloud and had been camouflaged into the dark. It was such heavy rain, but there was not a single drop of rain on him. The robe he wore fluttered even though there was hardly any wind. He stood there, staring the place where Gu Shijiu stood a moment ago. He was slightly fascinated but did not know what he was thinking. "Master." A black shadow emerged from the earth and bowed to him. "How?" The man in black robe did not ask much. "I have searched all around, but I can't find any trace of him." The man in black robes did not look happy. "Idiot. You can't even find the whereabouts of a living person with the blood butterfly I gave you. Why do I still need you?" The subordinate was nervous and quickly kneeled down. "Master, I am sinful. I beg for your mercy." The black-robed man stared at him coldly. His eyes looked deadly. He used his fingertips to create a spell and pointed it at the subordinate. It looked as though the subordinate was struck by an electric current. His body trembled, and his mouth was widely opened. However, he could not make a sound. He twitched on the ground a few times and finally did not move. He died, and from his facial expression, it looked like an agonizing death. The black-robed man did not move. After the subordinate died, his fingertips pointed in the air, and a red light flashed. A blood-red butterfly flew up and circled around him. Finally, it stayed on his fingertips. When the wings of the butterfly flapped, it looked very nice on his finger. "Master, are you in a bad mood?" A young green-clothed teenager appeared. He had bowed to his master before asking the question. This green-clothed teenager had a golden crown on his head and facial features that were undoubtedly beautiful. He had a pair of big eyes with long lashes. His mouth was relatively small and his skin was very fair. He even had a pair of dimples on his cheeks which made him look adorable. The only thing that made him seem masculine was the pair of thick eyebrows above his eyes. When he looked at the black-robed man, there were complicated feelings in his eyes. The black-robed man glanced at him and said softly, "Dai, your subordinates need to be retrained." The teenager lowered his head. "Yes, it is my fault that I did not supervise them well." The black-robed man looked at the blood butterfly on his fingertips. Even with the help of the butterflies, he could not find his whereabouts. "It seems like he's hidden himself well." The teenager spoke, "Perhaps it is because of the heavy rain. It has covered all his tracks." The black-robed man glanced at him. "Didn't you say that the blood butterfly searches for its target according to the smell of their blood? It is not something that can be washed away by water." Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates. Better experience, please click for visiting. The teenager bowed his head again. "It should be the case. This is why I am also wondering what happened. Even if Mr. Fui could hide his breath, he shouldn't be able to change the smell of his blood unless he has been swallowed by some other beasts." The black-robed man snorted. "Even if he has been swallowed, as long as he has not been digested, this blood butterfly would bring us to the beast. Master, is it possible that he has escaped to the city? Maybe he could hiding in an inn in the city." The teenager guessed. Chapter 2236, Anything to satisfy my master, If he returned to the city, I would know it. Even if he hides in those broken houses with the poor, my blood butterfly will still be able to sense him. The boy bowed. "True enough. Perhaps this blood butterfly is faulty. Let me condense a new one for you, and we can try again." The black-robed man did not speak. Apparently, he had agreed with him. The teenager bit his mouth slightly. He retrieved a sharp long needle out of nowhere. There was empty space inside the long needle, and it shone strangely under the moonlight. He pinched a spell and inserted the long needle into his heart. After that, he slowly twisted and twirled so that the long needle entered into the heart, inch by inch. A few seconds later, he stopped, and there was blood coming out from the long needle. The blood was dense and glowed in gold. It dripped in the palm of the teenager and spun like blood beads. This process was obviously extremely painful. The teenager's face went pale almost instantly. There was cold sweat from the forehead of the man, and it rolled down his cheek. His pinkish lips also slowly turned pale. After about 10 drops of blood emerged from the long needle, the teenager pulled out the long needle from his heart and held the blood droplets in his palm. He lifted his hand and said, "Master, please drop your blood here." The black-robed man stretched out his clean fingertips and exercised his spiritual power to force out a drop of blood to mix into the drops of blood in the teenager's palm. The teenager then looked down and performed some spells. A pale blue light emerged from his fingertips and surrounded his palm with drops of blood. After a moment, a red light emerged from his palm and slowly covered it. The teenager seemed to be burnt by fire. In fact, his face had just slowly looked better earlier, but it suddenly turned pale again, his fingertips were trembling. After the red light dissipated, a bloody red pupa appeared in his palm. He handed this pupa respectfully to the man in the black robe, and the man retrieved it. He slightly performed some spells on the cocoon on his palm, and the pupa broke out from its shell in just a second. After that, a blood-colored butterfly climbed out from inside and opened its bloody red wings in his palm. It was an extremely beautiful sight. The butterfly recognized him as its master, the tentacles on its head frequently swayed to him as if it was showing respect to him. The man in the black robe was satisfied. His fingertips touched the blood butterfly's tentacles gently. His sounded happy, "Dai, this blood butterfly is good." The boy sighed with relief. "Anything to satisfy my master." The teenager had exhausted a large extent of his spiritual power to create the butterfly. He could not even stand properly. The black-robed man gave him a light-colored pill. "This is your reward." "Thank you." The teenager, Dai, swallowed the pill. After a while, his face looked better. The black-robed man threw the newborn blood butterfly into the air and said, "Send more people to find Di Fui. We must not let him leave Shura world alive." "Yes, master," the teenager answered, then he whistled. The whistle was in low tune but could travel quite some distance. After a while, there was a similar sound coming from a pack of wolves in the distance. Apparently, it was to answer the whistle of the teenager. "Master, the wolf slaves have received instructions. They will search the jungle within a 100-mile radius. Even if Mr. Fui has hidden in a mouse hole, they will be able to find him," the teenager confidently reported. The black-robed man nodded. "Tell them to try to catch him alive. This person has a unique physique. It is ideal if we keep him alive." The teenager assured his master and sent out the instruction in a sound very much similar to a dolphin. "I didn't expect Mr. Fui to come to our site accidentally. It is a really good opportunity for us. We must catch him this time to seek revenge for our tree palace." Chapter 22:37, She is my bottom line. The teenager clenched his fist tightly and looked angry. Meanwhile, the black-robed man smiled. "After we catch him, I will hand him over to you first so that you can torture him and get your revenge. Sound good?" "Thank you, master." The teenager bowed. The man in the black robe chuckled. "Di, you don't have to be so humble with me. You are my most trusted subordinate, and I have always valued your contributions. As long as you execute my order well, I will not mistreat you." The teenager looked happy. "Certainly." His answer this time was a lot louder. "Well, let's go." The black-robed man waved his hand. The teenager followed him, but just when he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of something. He bowed and asked, "Master, I had investigated the incident when the tree palace was destroyed. Gu Shijiu was the girl Chong Sheng who sneaked into the tree palace. She has an extremely high skill in the upper bound. It is a golden opportunity for us that she has lost her spiritual power and memory when she comes here. Should we also take her down? If we put her into the alchemy, we can." Before he could finish his sentence, a black light flashed and seemed to aim for his cheek. The teenager did not expect to get such a tight slap on his face. He actually spun one round after the slap, and when he could stand up straight, there was blood flowing down from his lips. The black-robed man spoke in a cruel and evil tone, "I have told you before. You should not touch her. If you dare to touch her, I will take away your life." The teenager kneeled on the ground and looked incredibly uncomfortable. He whispered, "Noted. Remember, she is my bottom line. If you dare to touch her, I will make your life more miserable than death." "I don't dare to do so." The black-robed man no longer looked at him. He turned around and left. The green-clothed teenager still did not get up. However, his fists had slowly clenched tightly inside his sleeves. All this was about Gu Shijiu. What was so good about her? How could she get such special treatment from his master? Unfortunately, he did not find out about this woman earlier, or else he would have secretly gotten rid of her. When Gu Shijiu once again teleported back to the city, it was already close to dawn. The first thing she did when came back was to look for Di Fui in his room. The room was still the same as the time when she left. Nothing had changed during the time that she was away. Apparently, the owner here had never returned either. Disappointment surged in her heart. Did he not want to come back, or did something unexpected happen to him? She was tired, so she sat down on a chair to think. After all, she was drenched by rain for the whole night. Her body was soaked as if she had just come out from a bath. Even her hair was wet and tightly stuck to her scalp. The water droplets on her body trickled on the carpet under her foot. She looked around, and the room was very clean. As it was rented temporarily, there was very little that belonged to him in this room. Only the mattress on the bed belonged to him. Di Fui was very obsessed with cleanliness, so he did not like to sleep on the bedding prepared by others. Hence, no matter where he went, he always brought his own bedding. It was soft and clean like silk. As Gu Shizhou had been very close to him over the past few days, she somewhat understood his style and personality. If he did not plan to sleep at this place, he would definitely take his bedding away with him. Even if it were dirty, he would destroy it and would not leave it to others. He was unusually fussy about these types of things. Now that his bedding was still here. If he did not plan to live here anymore, he would have certainly cleared it. So, as long as nothing happened to him, he would come back sooner or later. He would either continue to stay or come back to take away his bedding. Chapter 2238, he did not return for the whole night since Di Fui was so powerful, nothing would have happened to him, right? All of a sudden, Gu Shizhou suddenly looked at her palm again. When she hit him with her palm earlier, he seemed to have taken a few steps back. Although she was angry at the time, she did not use her full strength. Even if this hit Chun Chao, it would not really hurt her. At most, it would only leave her with a swollen face. As Di Fui was significantly more powerful than Chun Chao, it should not have affected him at the slightest. Hence, he should be fine. Gu Shizhou now felt like a fool for searching for him the whole night. Frustrated, she combed the hair that covered her forehead and realized that she was still drenched. She quietly cursed and pinched her fingers to cast a spell to dry her body. However, due to utter exhaustion, she could not do so at the moment. She stood up and went back to her room to change into clean clothes. Suddenly, she thought of something and instantly returned to Di Fui's room. She saw that the place she sat on previously was actually wet. If he were back now, he would be able to know that she had been there and that she was looking for him in the rain. She bit her lips and subconsciously wanted to clean the chair and restore it to the original state. She did not want him to see that she cared about his well-being. Just when she was about to clean, she had another thought. She merely messed up the things in his room and then turned and left. Di Fui had a neat obsessive-compulsive disorder. If he came back and saw that his room was in a mess, he would definitely clean it up quickly. Gu Shizhou could hardly sleep throughout the night. She only managed to take occasional short naps. The sky outside was bright, and the sun shone into the room and alarmed her eyes. She got up with 2 dark circles and felt a little dizzy. She involuntarily blinked her eyes and then moved toward the wall to try to listen for any movements next door. It was quiet. She teleported again and found that the room was still in a mess, just as she left it last night. He did not return for the whole night. Yun Yanli was having a sweet dream when a knock on the door suddenly awakened him. He got up and opened the door to find Gu Shizhou standing outside, looking slightly tired and pale. "Mr. Yun, can you help me find him again?" Gu Shizhou went straight to the point. Yun Yanli raised his eyebrows in surprise. He seemed to be confused. "Him? Who?" Gu Shizhou slightly bit her thin lips. "Di Fui." Yun Yanli remained silent. "I thought you have broken up with Di Fui. Why do you suddenly want to find him?" These are the questions that flashed out of Yun Yanli's eyes. Although he did not directly ask them, it was evident from the look on his face. Gu Shizhou looked awkward. She took a light breath just as she was about to explain herself to Yun Yanli. However, she seemed to want to convince herself, as well. Although what he did was wrong, and I have broken up with him. It is a different story. He used to help me a lot. I cannot stay here and do nothing if I know that something happened to him. I just want to make sure that he is safe. Can you use your tracking technique to find him? She really had no other way. She could not contact him through the directed audio spell, and could not find him in person. Di Fui did not have teleportation powers, so he would definitely pass by the city gate to enter and exit. Gu Shizhou had gone to the city gate and checked before, but the new official told her that he only saw him head out of the city last night and did not see him return. Despite all her negative thoughts, Gu Shizhou still held a glimmer of hope before approaching Yun Yanli for help. The city gate closed on time every night at 11 p.m., and no one was allowed to enter or leave. When Gu Shizhou came back with Yun Yanli yesterday, she used her teleportation technique and bypassed the gate. The gate was already closed by the time they returned, so if Di Fui returned to the city, he would not be able to enter through the gate but would have to find another way through. That would explain why the gatekeeper would have no record of his return. Nonetheless, given his abilities, she was certain that he would find a way to enter. Thus, she checked all the inns in the city, however, the result was the same. Since she had no idea where he was, she had to come and ask for help. Find authorized novels in Webnovel Faster Updates, better experience please click for visiting. Yun Yanli looked at the sweat that rolled down from Gu Zijia's forehead and then shifted his gaze to the dark circles around her eyes. Did you not sleep at all last night? Were you out looking for him? No, I managed to sleep for a while. She only slept for 2 hours. Yun Yanli suddenly raised his hand and grabbed her wrist tightly. Gu Shijie frowned and subconsciously wanted to withdraw her hand. However, it was held tightly by Yun Yanli. Her palm was hot, but her fingertips were cold. Yun Yanli looked at her icily. Shijie, you have a fever. Gu Shijie finally managed to withdraw her hand. After hearing him out, she was stunned. She subconsciously touched her own forehead to check the validity of his statement. She found that her forehead was indeed hot. No wonder when she woke up this morning she felt a bit dizzy and her joints were sore. She initially attributed this to her fatigue, however, as she was too focused on looking for Gu Shijie, she did not pay much attention to it. At this moment, she was reminded by Yun Yanli and finally paid some attention to her health. It seemed that the heavy rain last night had an effect on her. Perhaps she caught a cold from it. Gu Shijie subconsciously put her hand into the sleeves, she wanted to take out some medicine for her treatment. Nonetheless, when her hand was in her sleeve, she could not find anything. All her medicines were given to her by Di Fui and were all in the storage bag that she returned to him. Gu Shijie decided to look on the bright side. It was just a cold, she would not die because of this. With her physique, she should be able to recover quickly. Satisfied with her conjecture, she looked up and was about to say something. However, her wrist was grabbed by Yun Yanli again. Come with me. Gu Shijie frowned. She did not like to have skin contact with people, subconsciously, she struggled, out of his grasp. What are you doing? You have the flu. It must be addressed immediately. Yun Yanli exerted so much force on Gu Shijie so she could not wriggle her way out. Instead, she had to follow him out of the place. Before Yun Yanli arrived, the place was in shambles. It was now sparkling clean. Yun Yanli retrieved a stool from his storage to let her sit down. He then took out a ceramic cup and poured a cup of hot water into it. He then took out 2 pills and handed it to her. This medicine can cure your cold. Eat it. Gu Shijie looked down at the pill and was stunned. Di Fui had given her the same pill before. He told her that it was refined by her when she was in the upper bound. The 2 pills looked precisely the same. She looked up at Yun Yanli, who smiled at her. Does this medicine give you any flashbacks? Shijie, this is medicine that has been refined by you. When you were in the upper bound, you gave it to me during one of our adventures. It is a miraculous effect on flu. Gu Shijie put the pill below her nose and smelled it. It became apparent to her that the pill given to her by Di Fui before was made in the same batch as the one in her hand right now. Chapter 2240, She did not want to kill him. Gu Shijie did not expect to be a master of medicine in heaven, it seemed that she had given out many valuable pills to her peers. Am I an expert in refining medicine? Gu Shijie asked casually. Yun Yanli smiled. You are not just an expert, you are the master of it. Your refining skill is unparalleled. Even the king of drugs respects you a lot. This statement was the same as what Di Fui had told her. Di Fui used to say to her that she was a refining genius. There were only a few people in the universe who could sit on the same level as Gu Shijie in the upper bound. It was improbable for Di Fui and Yun Yanli to have synchronized on this matter just to fool her. Therefore, on this point, they probably both told the truth. Gu Shijiu did not trust Yun Yanli too much at first. After all, she barely knew him down here. Subconsciously, she had the sense to be cautious around him. Nonetheless, after several scenarios, it could be seen that he had never lied to her. Gu Shijiu was happy to know that she was someone important in the upper bound. She smiled and said, "The flu I caught is not serious. I don't need to use the pill to be healed. Let me sweat a little bit, then I will recover." She then put the medicine into her sleeve. "I will eat it when I really have a serious illness." Yun Yanli looked down in disappointment but put on a smile. All right. He knew that she still did not trust him completely. She had always been a careful person, even when they were in the upper bound. It took him a very long time to become her friend. Therefore, he was not surprised by her current actions. It seemed that even if she had amnesia, her natural instincts still remained the same. Yun Yanli wondered if she was also cautious about Di Fui when she first met him in the Shura world. As Yun Yanli contemplated, Gu Shijiu exercised her spiritual power around her body. She sweated a lot in the process but managed to ease her condition substantially. Yun Yanli did not disturb her and merely watched her quietly at her side. When she opened her eyes, he said, "Let's go. Let's look for the man." He quietly utilized his spiritual power, and a red butterfly emerged from his fingers. Gu Shijiu breathed a sigh of relief. She knew that his butterfly would be able to help her find the person she was looking for. It seemed to accurately point out that Di Fui had returned to the city yesterday. Upon studying the butterfly more closely, she realized that the butterfly seemed to be a lot brighter than yesterday. Di Fui was missing. Yun Yanli's blood butterfly could not find any trace of him. According to Yun Yanli, his blood butterfly could sense the breath of a person within a 100-mile radius. As long as that person was within 100 miles of the butterfly, he would not be able to hide. However, the blood butterfly only circled around the two of them. Yun Yanli sighed. "Shijiu, he didn't return to Luohua City. You don't have to look for him in the city anymore." Gu Shijiu looked down in dismay. Indeed, she had searched the entire city and could not locate him. Although her words had hurt him, if he had returned to the city, he would not hide in the corner just to avoid her. After all, she did not want to kill him. Therefore, it made sense that Di Fui had not returned. Yun Yanli was indeed a good friend. Without Gu Zijius asking, he had suggested going to the place where they separated with Di Fui. That was a good starting point. Although Gu Shijiu had been there in the rain last night, perhaps the rain and the dark prevented her from retrieving valuable information. The forest was much quieter during the day than the night. Chapter 2241. Out of his expectation, the two of them returned to the place where Gu Shijiu had broken up with Di Fui. Once they arrived, Yun Yanli released the blood butterfly in hopes of finding Di Fui. To their dismay, the blood butterfly danced around a circle and fell back to Yun Yanli's palm. Gu Shijiu looked at him curiously. "How?" Yun Yanli slowly shook his head. "The blood butterfly cannot sense his breath. He is not here. Shijiu, let's try another place." Gu Shijiu looked disappointed. She stared at the blood butterfly and contemplated. "He was definitely here last night. Can't your blood butterfly follow his tracks to find him?" Yun Yanli shook his head. The blood butterfly can only sense if the targeted person is within a 100-mile radius. Gu Shijiu paused for a moment, and then silently went to look for clues. The torrential rain last night had washed away any tracks on the ground. Furthermore, there were always beasts in this place. Hence, it was not easy to find the trail of a person. Yun Yanli looked at Gu Shijiu from afar. She seemed to be very detailed and thorough when she was examining the place. While staring at her, he had just realized that she was still wearing the same clothes she wore the day before. There were bloodstains on her attire, and there was a hole in the sleeve. Having known her for many years in the upper bound while visiting friends and battling with monsters, he knew her temperament quite well. Although she was not obsessed with cleanliness, she always kept herself neat and tidy. She would not usually wear the same clothes overnight. What's more, this set of clothes was quite filthy. Yun Yanli speculated that she must have fallen deeply for Di Fui for her to have put aside all concern for herself in order to find him. Even though Yun Yanli was with her for more than 100 years, he could not change her feelings for him. She always treated him as a friend. He thought that no other man could make her fall in love again. He never expected Di Fui to win her heart in the Shura world. On top of that, he also did not expect Di Fui to be such a jerk. How could he have pretended to be her fiancé to earn her trust and also get her body? It was despicable. It was totally unacceptable. Unfortunately for him, such an excellent opportunity had been grabbed by Di Fui. If he had found her first, he might have won her heart here too. God was unfair to him. Yun Yanli secretly clenched his fist in regret. His eyes then fell on Gu Shizhou again. Although she had no memory and had lost a lot of her abilities, her character had not changed much. She was still so beautiful that he could not keep his eyes off her. He did not know when he started to fall in love with her. Perhaps, it started not too long after they got to know each other. He had certainly fallen head over heels for her. At that time, he certainly felt inferior to her. She did not care about status or power, unlike the common women around him. Moreover, she already had someone in her heart, so Yun Yanli just kept his feelings to himself to prevent the situation from becoming awkward. He planned to build the relationship between them slowly and hoped that when she slowly discovered his strengths, that she would let go of the person in her heart and accompany him to become his wife. He used to be confident that if he had enough time with her that he would eventually win her heart. After all, he was a prince in the upper bound, so his identity would be favorable to him. He also knew some secrets that ordinary immortals did not understand. Chapter 2242, It was really unethical. Yun Yanli knew that if the Lord of Lower Bound did not ascend after his or her soul dissipated, that person would not be reincarnated. Therefore, he had been waiting for his moment. However, he never expected that his family would be slain. He was a prince that used to be highly respected but was now a mouse that was chased around on the street. Although he seemed to be a gentleman that liked peace, he was actually very arrogant and ambitious. When the Yun family was still in power, he secretly cultivated his power to compete for the position of the crown prince. However, before he could start a war, things had utterly changed. These years, he had been patiently waiting for his opportunity. He tried to gain more power and secretly developed his own ability. He wanted to restore his family's power and stand on the peak again. He would ascend as the Emperor Immortal. Of course, he had never let go of Gu Shizhou. The idea of getting her to be his future queen had never changed. It was just that he did not want her to see into his mind. Otherwise, he might not even get to be her friend. He thought that it was good that she temporarily had someone in her heart, lest others would chase her before he gained back his fame. He thought he had enough time to fight for her, and did not expect his queen to be stolen from him by the little bastard, Shen Yanma. He never expected that the son of Divine Lord and Great Devil would use such a despicable method to steal his woman. It was really unethical. How could an immortal actually do such a shameful thing? Nonetheless, Yun Yanli had been waiting for this woman for hundreds of years. How could he let her go so easily? In the upper bound, he might not be the opponent of Di Fui. After all, the kid had so many prime masters to protect him. However, he was undoubtedly the king in the Shura world. He had subordinates all around, and his skill was unprecedentedly high. He was already at the level of a mighty immortal. He was probably invincible here. Yun Yanli believed that after some time, he would be able to break through the boundary of a mighty immortal and reach the level of a great deity. When the time came, he would return to the upper bound and take back what he once owned to avenge the Yun family. At the scene, Yun Yanli was still wandering around to look for clues. He was also very puzzled that Di Fui went missing. Yun Yanli could tell that Di Fui was injured at the time, but he was not sure of the extent of the injury. He also could not tell Di Fui's current level of spiritual power. Thus, he did not act rashly. He wanted to test him when Gu Shizhou left, but he did not anticipate that she would suddenly return and bring him along with her. Right after that, Di Fui had disappeared. Yun Yanli had sent many subordinates to find him, but they all failed. Did Di Fui leave the Shura world? It was impossible, right? He did not seem to be someone who would give up so easily. The more reasonable explanation was that he realized the potential danger, so he hid in some secret place. But where could he go? How could he hide so well that no one could find him? Yun Yanli had a lot of thoughts in his mind at that moment. When he turned his head, he saw that Gu Shizhou was kneeling on the ground, carefully studying a particular spot with a wooden stick. He walked over and asked, "What did you find?" Gu Shizhou bit her lips and used the stick to retrieve a small black bone. Surprised, Yun Yanli carefully examined the bone. Chapter 22:43, her observation skill was too sharp. Yun Yanli casually said, "There are always fights between the beasts, so it is quite normal for there to be a residual bone, right? This bone belongs to a human." Gu Shizhou used a leaf to carry the small bone and concluded, "This person has just died. If I am not mistaken, he died last night." Yun Yanli remained silent. Her observation skill was too sharp. He knew that she was a doctor and that her medical expertise was very sophisticated. Therefore, she was very familiar with the human body. If she were in the upper bound before, it was not unusual for her to make such a conclusion. However, she had lost her memory now. Could she be mistaken? How do you know that? Yun Yanli was very confused. Instinct. Gu Shizhou answered in one word. Yun Yanli was speechless. Well, some skills are acquired naturally and cannot be taken away even by a loss of memory. Upon closer observation, Gu Shizhou also found a piece of cloth. It was black, and it seemed like it was torn from a robe. She picked it up and tucked it into her sleeve. Yun Yanli asked, "Shizhou, do you think that Mr. Fui has been killed? I remember that he wore a green robe yesterday." "This is not him." Gu Shizhou interrupted. "This person died here at around 11 p.m. It seemed like some poison eroded him. This was around the time when she broke up with Di Fui. Hence, it could not be him." Nonetheless, Gu Shizhou wanted to get down to the bottom of this matter. Gu Shizhou did not like to explain when she investigated a case, so she did not reveal much after the cloth was collected. She had already studied the area thoroughly but could not find anything else. Therefore, she decided to leave together with Yun Yanli. Shortly after they left, a young boy in a light green robe appeared on a big tree in the distance. He had a baby face with 2 small dimples, which accentuated his looks. It was Dai Er, the subordinate of the mysterious black-robed man last night. This person was actually a woman. She just loved menswear and liked to travel around the world as a man. She looked in the direction in which Gu Shizhou and Yun Yanli took from a distance. She was holding a branch in her hand and shattered it with little effort. Her master treated Gu Shizhou extraordinarily well. In front of her, he even hid more than half of his original strength. Did he just want to be with her on an equal status? Or did he actually have another intention? While contemplating, the directed audio spell at her waist suddenly lit up. She picked it up and heard a voice from the other side. "Palace Master, we have searched the area within a 500-mile radius and did not find that person. Continue searching." "Yes, Palace Master. However, if we continue heading north, we will soon enter the demon realm. If that person has gone into that realm, there is no need to enter. The demon realm in the Shura world does not allow outsiders to enter, and there is also devil fire at the grounds. If an outsider enters into that area, he or she will only be burnt into charcoal." "Yes, Master." The Shura world was actually huge. It was about the size of China. There were rivers and lakes, deserts and swamps, alpine and hills, as well as a plethora of other things. According to an insider, the entire Shura world used to have a population of more than 100 million people. There were humans, monsters, devils, and beasts. Although the land here was barren, it was still peaceful. Many communities coexisted in this world. However, a significant change happened 100 years ago. The population here had been reduced by 90%, leaving less than 10 million people who survived. They were distributed among the 9 remaining cities in the Shura world, and the average population in each town was almost the same at around 1 million. Chapter 2244. This person had completely disappeared. Although the population size had shrunk dramatically, it was still difficult to find Di Fui. Shijiu, I suspect that Di Fui has returned to the upper bound. When Yun Yanli said this sentence, he and Gu Shijiu were in Sui City. It had been more than a year since Di Fui went missing. Gu Shijiu had traveled to 9 cities in this continent to the point where her footprints could be found throughout the Shura world. If Di Fui were still in the Shura world, he would undoubtedly enter one of the cities because of the blood rain. Additionally, he would only stay in luxurious accommodation due to his nature. Thus, every time Gu Shijiu entered a city, she would find all the inns that looked posh in the town and searched every room. Except for the inn in Luohua City where he once lived, she could not find any trail of him elsewhere. No one seemed to have seen or heard of him either. This person had completely disappeared. There was no trace of him at all, which made it seem like he never even came here in the first place. Di Fui, from now on, you will walk your path, and I will have my own path. I will never want to see you again. This was what she once said to him, and she never saw him again after that. Sui City was the last city that Gu Shijiu explored. The city was bustling with crowds, but Di Fui was nowhere to be seen. Quite a number of things happened this year. Gu Shijiu had contributed a lot of spiritual crystals to the owner of Luohua City, so Yiling had been treating her people well. They were arranged to have good jobs and were also placed in good houses. They also had good meals. It was safe to say that the villagers had finally settled down in Luohua City. Since Gu Shijiu did not have to worry about them anymore, she spent most of her time this year traveling the Shura world in search of someone. Half a year ago, she had returned to Luohua City, and she heard the news that Yiling's wife, the co-owner of Luohua City, had died of illness. Gu Shijiu had heard that she was the orchestrator behind the scenes who was very capable. To avoid causing a panic among the people, Yiling concealed the death of his wife until 5 months had passed. In those 5 months, the people in the city were still living peacefully and had not experienced any significant changes. Gu Shijiu did not pay much attention to the matter. After all, Madame Yun had been living alone, and she did not know her at all. Having analyzed the situation, it seemed that Madame Yun passed away half a month after the disappearance of Di Fui. Meanwhile, Gu Shijiu managed to obtain an ample amount of spiritual crystals and managed to restore part of her spiritual power. She now possessed a level 8 spiritual power. Not many people in the Shura world could challenge her. Furthermore, with her improved abilities, she was now able to quickly kill any beasts that carried second-grade spiritual crystals with them. Coupled with her teleportation skill, no one dared to mess with her. Yun Yanli had accompanied her closely since Di Fui's sudden disappearance. Of course, he occasionally had his own private affairs. However, he would always reconnect with her as soon as he sorted his issues out. Time passed by briskly as they searched for Di Fui. Nonetheless, every time Gu Shijiu entered a new city, she would do so with hope. Needless to say, her hope turned into disappointment at every turn. It was now near noon, so the two found a restaurant to sit and have a meal. The currency used in the Shura world was not gold or silver. Instead, the citizens had to exchange spiritual crystals for paper noted that were accepted in the city. Gu Shijiu had hunted more than enough spiritual crystal, so naturally, she changed a lot of paper notes. No matter where she went, she did not need to worry about money. Chapter 2245. Everyone stayed safe and sound. Sui City was very near to the Black Desert, which was the territory of the Devil Kingdom in the Shura world. During her journey, Gu Shijiu learned that the Devil Kingdom in the Shura world was homegrown. The Devil Kingdom was mighty and once occupied 2/3 of the Shura world. Later, there was a mysterious immortal who appeared in the Shura world. This immortal led the human race to fight against the Devil Kingdom for 10 years. Finally, the Devil Kingdom retreated, and in the end, only the Black Desert belonged to the Devil Kingdom. the human race had finally been able to prosper. Not only did they defeat the Devil Kingdom, but they also managed to practice their spiritual power and develop it. Initially, the human race had its own methods of cultivation, but because of the war, the vast majority of the human race had practiced the same skill of the mysterious immortal. In particular, their method of training their spiritual power came from the mysterious immortal. This immortal was very secretive. He rarely showed up in front of people. On the rare occasion when he did appear, he would be in a black robe with a mask on his face. Therefore, no one had actually seen his real face before. Everyone just respected him as the immortal of Shura and treated him as the patron saint of the Shura world. After more than 20 years of peaceful life, the spiritual power of the Shura world disappeared overnight. The fierce beasts became enraged, and the bloody rain poured out every 10 days here. It made the human race in the Shura world almost completely demolished. Fortunately, during the critical period, the immortal of Shura, who had been quiet for more than 20 years, had once again appeared. He used his excellent skill to build the 9 great cities and saved the life of the survivors. Besides, he also looked for 9 special spiritual power practitioners to be the city owners. It was said that these special ritual power practitioners could strengthen the wizardry barrier on the cities. If these people went missing without a proper successor, the city would be destroyed by the blood rain. Everyone thought that the Devil Kingdom created this disaster. However, during these years, the Devil Kingdom had never even made a move. They kept an extremely low profile. Despite these odd challenges, the human race had never weakened their defense. Instead, they got even stronger. The lingering fear that the Devil Kingdom was plotting against them kept them vigilant and at their best. There were spiritual power practitioners who wanted to take the initiative to attack the Devil Kingdom. They sent spies into the Devil Kingdom to gather information. However, none of the spies came back alive. Later, they sent it masters to analyze the situation. Fortunately, some escaped by luck and reported that it was not a suitable place for humans to enter. There was a devil fire everywhere which would burn any human into ashes. After this, the humans gave up the idea of destroying the Devil Kingdom. After all, the 2 races had not offended each other. Hence, everyone had stayed safe and sound. There were many different versions of stories to explain why the Devil race had never taken any opportunity to attack the human race. The most reasonable explanation was that the disputes within the Devil Kingdom had been quite intense in these years, so they had no time to care about the outside world. Shijiu, why do you think the Devil race has never sought revenge? In the room, Yun Yanli casually asked Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu said calmly, I have not been to the Shura Devil Kingdom, so I have no comment. Yun Yanli remained silent. He could not continue the topic anymore. In the year when he stayed by her side, although her abilities were not fully restored, her character was getting more similar to the time when she was in the upper bound. She did not care about anything, she did not like to talk, and she was always cold and calm. Yun Yanli stared at her while she was sipping the wine in her glass. He noticed that her skin had returned to its original state. It was no longer wheat-colored and dry. Her eyelashes were thick with curls. They were stunning features.